The more judges say that they're apolitical, especially in cases like this, especially given their denigration and derision and contempt for Trump, their anti-Trump animus, which has been evident throughout the entire processes, certainly in New York and here in Washington, D.C., both with the prosecutors and the judges, the more you can be sure that it is political. First up is the news out of New York, where Judge Merchan, who is the judge in New York who presided over the kangaroo court proceeding that saw President Trump convicted of non-crimes, a truly abominable result in an outrageous process run by Democratic Party politician Alvin Bragg. Merchan himself violated the rules by the ethics rules and arguably the law by donating to the Biden campaign and Democratic operatives. And of course, he's hopelessly conflicted because of his daughter's business connections to the Democratic Party. He's declined to proceed with the sentencing he had scheduled for September 18th. I had an initial reaction to the news earlier today. Huge victory for President Trump today. Judge Merchan backed down the Democratic donor judge who is seeking to jail Trump, has changed the sentencing date from September till after the November election. It's a big victory for Trump. It's a big victory for the rule of law. It's a big victory against the regime's effort to rig elections. But unfortunately, the harassment of Trump continues. It's happening here in Washington, D.C., with Jack Smith using another court case to try to harass Trump up until the election. Another reason Congress has got to get on the ball, get back into town, and defund Jack Smith. Be sure to share your views with Congress on this at 202-225-3121. 202-225-3121. So, a big victory for the rule of law. They were, and I was convinced that Trump faced significant chances of being led away in chains in September if Merchan proceeded with his plans. And I think the plans were thwarted by political concerns that he would be helping Trump, by the rule of law. The Supreme Court has ruled in a way to suggest that the federal courts would shut him down. And so he backed down. And now it's been set for November, what was it, 26th he set the time for. And I'm going to read you, initially he seemingly was going to proceed. President Trump had sought support from a federal court judge, a Clinton appointee, who brushed all his substantial arguments aside, and he filed an emergency appeal with the Second Circuit the night before last. I did a tweet on it to kind of give you a feel for some of the language from the appeal. Let's put that tweet up. Update: Real Donald Trump legal team files urgent appeal, as I said, to prevent corrupt, compromised, and conflicted New York judicial system, namely Judge Merchan, from ignoring the U.S. Supreme Court, that ruling on the immunity and jailing Trump. And this is the language: unlawfully incarcerating President Trump in the final weeks of the presidential election while early voting is ongoing would irreparably harm the First Amendment rights of President Trump and voters located far beyond New York County, and New York County meaning Manhattan. So Judge Merchan changed his mind. It wasn't like he didn't know it would be 40 days before the election when he made the initial ruling setting the sentencing for later this month. So something happened. There's been new details about his ethics, as I noted, and let me read you a little bit from his nonsensical, dishonest decision to show you where his head is at. This matter is one that stands alone in a unique place in the nation's history, and this court has presided over it since its inception. Were this court to decide, after a careful consideration of the Supreme Court's decision in Trump, that this case should proceed, it will be faced with one of the most critical and difficult decisions a trial court faces: the sentencing of a defendant found guilty of crimes by a unanimous jury of his peers. The adjournment request has now been decided in the same way this court has decided every other issue that has arisen since the origination of this case, applying the facts and the laws and the law after carefully considering the issues and respective arguments of the parties to ensure the integrity of the proceeding is protected, justice is served, and the independence of the judiciary is kept firmly intact. What bunk, given the way he's conducted this whole charade against President Trump. He's abused him, and he's pretending he's acting independently all of a sudden. What has changed? You know what's changed? He finally admitted that the politics has changed. Unfortunately, we are now at a place in time that is fraught with complexities, rendering the requirements of a sentencing hearing, should one be necessary, difficult to execute. So what does that mean, should one be necessary? He still hasn't ruled on the Supreme Court ruling that essentially should result in the case dying. The guilty verdicts being vacated and them having to go back to square one, because President Trump has his lawyers have quite ably detailed how the case against him has involved material and activities from his days as president that would be subject to the immunity analysis and protections that the Supreme Court has mandated the lower courts engage in if they're going to harass Trump. He hasn't even grappled with that yet. And he kind of set it up for September 16th because the writing was on the wall, right? He was going to rule. He was supposed to rule today, I think, on the immunity issue. Instead, he just kicked the can down the road. And I think the Democrats see this whole scheme as being unhelpful at this period in the election season. Thus, in accordance with certain of the grounds submitted by defendant and the reason for adjournment provided by the people, coupled with the unique time frame this matter currently finds itself in, and the imposition of the sentence will be adjourned to avoid any appearance, however unwarranted, that the proceeding has been affected by or seeks to affect the approaching presidential election in which the defendant is a candidate. Of course it's been affected by. I mean, judges who pretend that they can just operate as if there's nothing else in the world happening, it's absurd. And to pretend otherwise is dishonest. The court is a fair, impartial, and apolitical institution. He's been found by the Ethics Commission in New York, he's been dinged for giving money to political candidates as a judge, including Biden. How is he saying he's apolitical? And he says this decision advances the interests of justice. Now, so the good news is that it's been delayed. It's gone till the end of November 26th. In the meantime, he still has a gag order on Trump that constrains his First Amendment rights in the middle of the campaign. So the campaign intervention, the campaign interference, the campaign rigging by the Democrat activist judge continues with the support of Alvin Bragg, the Democratic Party operator, district attorney up in New York. But at least Trump is going to be free through the end of November. Now, maybe Merchan will think better of it and kind of get a feel for the law finally and pursue the Supreme Court's strong suggestion that they begin anew and shut down this case and vacate it in its entirety. I mean, just remember how it all began. This is a misdemeanor issue. Whether the business records were manipulated in some way, there's no evidence they were. and it elevated into a felony, they let the jury pick an unnamed other crime, including a federal election crime. How does that work in any court? So the case is an abomination, and I can complain and fulminate about it all I want, but the fact is Trump was facing jail over it. Truly would have been a political prisoner in the sense his freedom would have been in jeopardy. So, for now, right? But of course the harassment continues, as I suggested earlier in my clip. Judge Chutkan, all of a sudden, the Supreme Court ruled, and she's now pushing full speed ahead to harass Trump by allowing the Jack Smith Justice Department, the Garland Justice Department, the Biden-Harris Justice Department, to upend the way things normally go and start putting on the court record all sorts of allegations of criminal conduct by Trump in a way that typically wouldn't be allowed in a case. And she's kind of accelerating the process so that this material is put on the record before the election. And again, Judge Chutkan was also saying the other day in court, oh, I'm not letting the election get in the way of this. Of course she should be letting the election get in the way of this. First of all, there's no time constraint that requires any of this be done before November. There might be a political purpose behind it. So she's saying that she would be conducting hearings requiring Trump's presence, for instance, on election day or a day before an election or the day of a debate. I mean, the more judges say that they're apolitical, especially in cases like this, especially given their denigration and derision and contempt for Trump, their anti-Trump animus, which has been evident throughout the entire processes, certainly in New York and here in Washington, D.C., both with the prosecutors and the judges, the more you can be sure that it is political. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.